How's it, guys? It's Tace here from Meads Knives, and I've been threatening to do this YouTube upload for ages, and I want to start tutorials where I'm showing guys the things I've learned throughout my knife making. We're going to go quickly through the shaping of the bolsters for the liners. So I'm making a lockback currently in this video, and what I've done is I've soldered the bolsters onto the liner, and I've marked out, I didn't show in this video, but I've marked out along the perimeter of that bolster exactly where I want to grind down to. So I start grinding. I'm dipping frequently to make sure that I don't heat that bolster up, because if it heats up it could potentially loosen itself from the liner. So I'm dipping frequently and I'm grinding very carefully down to that line which I've marked. And checking it frequently, and then what I start doing is I look at the front of the bolster and the rear of the bolster, and I make sure that they're even and that I've got a nice even radius. You see there I'm starting to shape from the one side right to the other side, so I'm starting to rock it from the one to the other to make sure that those curves blend in quite nicely. So I'm practically finished here. I have a quick look. I'm happy with that, and then I compare it to the other bolster which I've done off video. So here I'll show you guys. I just have a quick look. I put them together. I make sure that they're both looking pleasing and similar. Okay, so just before we start getting to glue the scales on, I take some acetone and I clean any residue, whether it be greasiness from my fingers or maybe some super glue that I've used while I was gluing the bolsters. I just clean up everything just to make sure everything is perfect. I didn't glue the bolsters on, I've soldered them on, but while I was shaping and drilling the profiles of the bolsters, I had them glued on. Okay, so yeah, I've got the wood. This is California redwood burl that I am cutting with a bandsaw. I'm just sort of marked it roughly and I'm cutting it out. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I'm on the grinder and I'm just rough shaping the profile of the scales out, and yeah, just getting it ready for gluing. The last thing I do before I glue the scales onto the bolsters is just square off the edge. It's a little bit difficult with these sort of natural materials, and you can see a little bit of chipping occurring there, but I try and go as carefully as I possibly can just to make sure that the face that's going up against the bolster is 100% square. And then just before I glue the scales onto the liners, I make sure that they're perfectly flat. That aids in a very good bond between the scales and the liners. Okay, so here I am just putting super glue out of frame. I'm putting super glue onto the, or CA glue onto the scale, and I'm making sure it's very well covered. I've actually I put too much on, I think, in this frame, and I was shaking a little bit of that glue off, but it's not a bad thing. You really want that glue to go everywhere and to stick everywhere. Don't want your scale coming loose. Alright, so here what I do is I put it on the granite block and then I apply very firm pressure to make sure that the liner remains flat. One of the problems I've had in the past is I've glued it on and the liner wasn't exactly flat and straight, and then you run into problems later down the road when you're trying to get a good fit between your spring and the blade sitting nice and squarely. the end of it. Okay, so once the glue has set, I then go back to the grinder and I bring the scales right back to the liners again, or very, very close. I'd say within 2/10 of a mil probably. I go as close as I possibly can without touching the liner, because I don't want to alter the shape that I've now predetermined when I was shaping those lines. I just use it as a guide to go nice and close and bring them right up. And just also, you've got to be careful here not to heat the wood up too much. Sometimes if it's not specifically a wood cutting belt that's on, you can heat the wood up a little bit, and if you get too much heat into it, the super glue loses its bond. So you've got to be very careful here not to overheat your work. So I'm touching it frequently with my finger. I'm not applying a lot of pressure, just to make sure that I'm not getting any heat buildup in that scale. Just also touching and seeing that it's flat. You can see visually, you can see, but it's always very good to touch it as well. You can often feel quite a lot by feeling something, and you can determine if it's not square or if it's not flush. So trust your eyes, but also make sure that you look at your work. Please touch it, feel it. It will also give you a whole lot of clues as to what's happening. Yeah, I'm just doing this sort of final radius. Got to be very, very careful here. You don't want to run it out of square. So I'm just finalizing this now, getting it nice and close to the liner, and that's it. The next process is to drill those holes. See those holes there in the liner? I now drill those holes on the drill mill that I have, and my hand's unfortunately in the way. It was a bit awkward setting the camera up, but you got to make sure that you're holding your workpiece nice and flush, and you drill those holes carefully through. Don't force that bit through, otherwise you'll split the wood on the underside, and that'll ruin the scale, because that's the visual side that you're actually looking at. So I'm drilling very slowly and carefully here, and ensuring that I don't push that bit too hard. I'm checking, I'm cleaning the work surface there to make sure that that piece is nice and flush and straight. Okay. So once I've drilled those holes, I lay the scales and liners assembly now flush on the granite block, and I'll mark it out with a height gauge. It's about the same as the lines for the bolsters. I haven't actually changed the setting, and that was a trick that was taught to me by Paul Mason. You mark that line right around, and then you've got a line to work to when you're rough shaping the scales now. So I think this one goes on a little bit now, but while I'm shaping this on the disc, you can see that I'm checking it often, because sawdust or wood dust builds up on the top of the scale there, and you can't see the line that I've marked. So as soon as I can't see that line, I blow it to make sure that I can see the line that I'm working to. So I shape the top first, the top of the scale, and once I'm satisfied that I've worked it down to the line, I then flip it upside down, and I'll start working the underside. Obviously you've got to be very careful, because the first place where you're going to reach your line is at the back of the hand, and the rest has got to be done by hand, and that will be shown in the video. So I'm carefully rocking and rotating that to make sure that I'm getting a nice smooth radius on my rough shaping, and I'm working to the line. And I think it's about at this point where I'm satisfied where I've got to, and then I'll flip it. Oh, okay, I got a little bit more to do on that side. And as I move it towards the top of the disc, obviously the speed of the disc is faster then, it moves more material. I seem to be working the side quite a lot, just to make sure, just carefully working it down to make sure that I'm satisfied that I've got to the line and that I've removed the correct amount of material. Okay, so yeah, I flip it upside down and I'll start working it. I'll start doing the same thing, but I'll work towards the back of the scale now, which is the point that's going to reach my mark outline first. So I just take it to there and that's it. The rest is done by hand. And in here I've put both scales together now, and I'm just taking away the scale material where the lockback mechanism is going to be. So I'm looking here now where the sharpest part of the belt is and taking it right down to the scale. Careful not to remove any of the liner material here. I just want to move the wood and the scale material down to where the line. Okay, well that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed that.